Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Simeon Morrow, Executive Communications Coaching, and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded, please turn off your camera and microphone and/or go to the Facebook Live video feed, the link to which I'll now place in the chat room. For a better experience, please turn off your microphone and set your video to gallery view. Tonight, our featured guest is Juan Muñoz, an architect and video producer. Also joining us tonight is Dr. Lino Rivera, professor of music at St. Mary's College of California. Juan, welcome.
Hi, Sim. I have to change my camera now, and I'm here.
Hi. Juan, tell us a little bit about where you come from and your path to becoming an architect.
Okay, right spring on the pool. I'm from Colombia. I come from actually from two really Colombian families. That means from that mixture between the natives people in South America and many Europeans and maybe Arabs people and also African people. That means I come from a really mixed West world. But in the last 50 years, I am a Colombian guy who lives in Vienna already 23 years.
Juan, so when I asked you to come on the show, you said you wanted to give a presentation called Nomad Architecture. Can you tell us a little bit about this presentation?
Yeah, before I want to say hello to faces that I know. So Lino Rivera, thank you for coming, and many people who I know from other times when I worked with Simeon. And yes, I'm architect, but I am not a star architect like Norman Foster or Gaudí or something like that. I never thought about it. I never go on that way, but I went from the beginning in a special way to be an architect, and it's more to think like architect. And my creativity was not really in the direction building something really objectual. It was more building something in thinking. And in that way, that's why I said maybe it's like a nomad architect, because I don't really have a rucksack to take everything and live like a sedentarious guy, Norman Foster buildings or whatever. And it's more like nomad who go in many offices, in many places, I am not a really travel guy, but my mind travel really a lot. That's why I think nomad architect could be a good, define me a bit in what is my architecture life. We can see the presentation. It's not a really presentation. I can show you some pictures from that way, from how I am that kind of architect. But maybe before I can tell us something about how I became an architect, if you are agree.
Please, it would be great. Tell us a little bit what an architect does, what an architect, how you study architecture, and your path. I know that you studied there in Bogota before coming to Vienna to study, like you said. So what is it? What normal people, I guess they think about architects, yeah, are people who build those big skyscrapers in New York or Brunelleschi's dome in Florence. What exactly is an architect? How are they different from an engineer, for example?
Yes, I was actually always surprised how some people do some really grateful and wonderful works like Brunelleschi or but I didn't recognize that one man can do really that. It's like I was always interested more in how is the process to make something in the daily life. And I was really never focused how they do some really the Vatican couple or Michelangelo paintings or something like that. And actually, from that two families that I already said, I became many information about music, about architecture. Many of the people in my family are architects and also writers. So, and also business people. So it was like many, really, really much information. And that's why I start to study early, so petrol engineer. So nothing to do, not really. And but after 2 semesters, I decided no, that's not what I want to do. That is not what I think. And then I spoke with an architect. This one of the most important people in my life. He's my father. He's also architect. He is urbanist. And he explained me, because he was also professor at the 3 universities on that time, and he explained me what his meaning from urbanism and why he teach that stuff. And I was really, oh, that is what I want to do. And I never lived with him. So my my parents was divorced, and I never lived with him. And then it was like one idea that comes, okay, but why is architecture so important for him or for me? Because architecture was for him many things. He read books to us, my brother and me, when we was small childs, and he always start with, that book was printed in Mexico in 1972. And we was like, what? Why he don't start the book? But for he was really important what is around something. And I think that was the idea that he explained me that day. What is architecture for him is around something, is everything that is around some object in architecture, what is really make that object. That make one obsession in my life. I never say that like it's not really conscious, but I know now with 50 years that I became always the same idea, to know what is the context, make the object. And that is architecture for me. And that's why I study architecture, because it was like many things around something, like many people in my family around me.
And so when you got to the university and or the technical school and you were studying architecture, did the other professors understand or have the same viewpoint, the same definition of architecture, or did you get into fights with them? How was your academic career?
That is a really important question, I think so, because that make a really difference in me. it was not easy. Why? Because architecture is actually really thinking and design something. So create something. And at the university, in my university and in many that I know, we train to have a problem and so quick as possible became a design solution. And I was always late. I was always late in each presentation, in each class. Not late that I come at 7 or at 8. I was always on the right time. But the other friends from me or the colleagues from the study, they came with a plan, with a house, with a building, with a hospital on the first or second week. And I came always with the Bogota map and said, oh, wow, I'm really late. The other ones was really fast for me, for my speed. But then I know that I wanted to become more reasons or many reasons from where is that point where we want to build a hospital or a kindergarten. Why the cars come from that way? How is the sun? How come the people from which streets come the parents to bring the kid? How big is the kid and how big is the grandma to bring there was so many questions around to design what a kindergarten or a school or whatever that's why it take me so many time to decide or to design something. And that was a problem, not only with the professors, with me and myself, because for me it was a real oppression. Why I'm always too late?
Okay, Juan, if it's okay with you, while you prepare your presentation, I'd like to show the viewers the first of 3 parts of this sustainable building materials video. Is that okay with you?
Yep, okay.
Der Bau und Betrieb von Gebäuden sind für 40% der globalen Treibhausgasemissionen verantwortlich. Um unsere Klimaziele zu erreichen, müssen wir nachhaltige Baustoffe verwenden und unsere Städte ökologisch sanieren. Wir stellen euch heute 4 Unternehmungen aus Wien und Niederösterreich vor, die an Projekten und Lösungen arbeiten, um das Bauen nachhaltiger zu gestalten. Wir sind jetzt hier in Böheimkirchen bei einem ganz besonderen Objekt, das fast ausschließlich aus nachwachsenden Rohstoffen besteht. Und wir treffen jetzt den Robert Wimmer von der GRAT, Gruppe Angepasste Technologie. Er beschäftigt sich schon seit Mitte der 80er Jahren mit nachwachsenden Rohstoffen, angepasste Technologien und so weiter. Und jetzt schauen wir, was er uns dazu erzählen kann.
Das ist unser Mehrparteien-Wohnhaus, das in einer speziellen modularen Fertigung errichtet wurde. Das kann man sich so vorstellen, fertige Container in Halle vorgefertigt. Wir haben das virtuelle Fabrik genannt, allerdings von Kleinstbetrieben. Das Leitprinzip von dem gesamten Projekt ist, weitestgehend mit nachwachsenden Rohstoffen zu bauen, möglichst energieautonom das zu betreiben, diese modulare Bauweise und die virtuelle Fabrik in der Herstellung.
Fantastic. Juan, so if you'd like, you can comment on that or begin with urban thinking, your presentation.
Okay, what we saw now, it's actually the end from that nomad way. So that is what I do now, that kind of videos and that kind of thematic. But maybe I can explain really, I hope really quick, what is the way how that I have to come on that end. If it's okay for you?
Please.
the screen. You see that?
Yes, we do.
Okay, that is where I do my thesis from architecture degree. It's in the periphery from Bogota, and it calls a project for Bogota from Bogota, because it was important to me to know what is Bogota, to design something in Bogota, in an urban theme. That is today, how is that part, and it developed really in an absolutely other way, like I wanted to explain in my degree. So it's not really what I wanted. And that is, again, that is the first workshop that I do with Austrian people in Bogota in 1997. And it was also about the periphery from Bogota, and we do some drawings. I was the last generation that we drawing everything with the hand. After me, the next semester was everything with the computers. And that is also that we do with ideas, how works the nature with the city in a mixture. And that moment start my thinking about the city in another way. I know that. That is also in Vienna. That was when I fly to Vienna in 1998, and I made some exposition with that project, and it's about Vienna, also a urban project with another ideas with the green places. That is the second project in Vienna. That is also a urban planning project, and is in the center from Vienna, in a really important place where every architect will be dead to design that place. That was the most risk place to design in Vienna. That was the team, and that is also one graphic that I do for that exchange, because I came to Vienna with a study exchange, something like Fulbright, some similar. Then I started in Vienna to make my own way with a scholarship, and it was about the relations between the city transport systems and the society. After that, I made my last drawings projects with the hand, and that was in Palestine, in Gaza City. We bring ideas for water solutions. And that is, again, important ideas that bring that nomad. So thinking always in many problems in different cities. Problems like in detail, but problems also in a big scales. Then I start to work in many different offices. I worked already in 7 different offices, and it was always really big and really international. It was not really the way to work for the society or for the city problems in a social way. It was more design and cool design and like stars design. It was not what I wanted actually to do, but I wanted to live from architecture, and I wanted to have a really many experiences. And then I started to work in that is a Congress center that we won the competition. Is near from Frankfurt. It's in Darmstadt, and we built that. That is the first building where I take part of in a big office. And the important thing here for me to show you is that why is a nomad architect is because that is not really a Juan Muñoz style. When you are a nomad architect and you work for many other architects and you make steps in different offices, you have to read how is the style from that office, or how is the meaning from that star architect, the owner from that office, and then you try with you kind of solutions to bring the best solution in your way, but with the style or with the ideas also from the main architect from that office. That is what made me a nomad architect, because I was in 7 different offices, and it was always, for example, that is another kind of architecture. This is absolutely simple, absolutely straight architecture. The other, that is a hospital, is another meanings. And then I was in a big project in a line that is in the Arab Emirates, United Arab Emirates, that is houses for really rich people, that are villas. That are the villas. I don't know if is the picture okay? You see the pictures?
Yes, we
Okay.
see them perfectly.
Okay, thanks. And that is the kind of villas that the people in the United Arabs want, with less sun, because we are here in Europe, we love the sun and we make a big windows for the sun. No, you understand when you design for another culture, another climate, another weather, that the architecture and the people are different. And that is also one really important thing that I collected on that experience to be architect nomad in many different cultures with many different styles from architecture. That is in Madrid for another office, for another client, and that is the Miguel Bosé house. Never built it because he's in bankruptcy on that time, but we designed his house. And also, that is a secret, but I tell everybody that's why it's no more a secret. It's also Shakira's house on that plot. Is Miguel Bosé, Shakira, and the other ones, I don't know, maybe Maluma afterwards. That is, again, a really big competition. Is actually the biggest competition worldwide still now, is the Egypt Museum from the pyramids. And as thanks God, we was the second place, because nobody can build that. So it was not possible to build that. And that was a really, really win for us. That was more than 3,000 participants, and we won the second place. And I think it's the first time that I was almost drunk in my life, because it was a really good that we don't won. That is in Kiev, is for another office, a really big and a really straight office in Vienna. And that was many buildings for the Europe champion soccer, world champion Europe champion in Kiev, I think 10 years ago. And we do many experiments with many kind of forms and curves. And that is what I mean. I have to adapt myself and my thinking and my hand in another style from architecture in different offices. That is also on that office. That is a building that I designed from the beginning. That is a hotel so it's really in front of Schönbrunn. Schönbrunn is like Versailles. That's a big palace from the Habsburgs, and that is really in front of. And that is again a nice experience to design in another office that kind of buildings, and I do the whole concept from that building, and it's already built there. I don't have a picture here, I think. I have to. Oh yes, that is a picture from that building when it's ready.
And Juan, what does that mean when? So you designed it principally. How is that different from when you're assisting another person to design it? Like you said, the principal architect of the firm.
Yeah, actually, the difference is that how autonomous are you? How you can decide many things. If you are the owner from the office, you have the last word, and you have also the responsibility that the building stay there. If you are a participant, you bring some ideas, but it's not your full responsibility, and this is a really big deal. And on that case, I designed the whole first concept from that building, and it was so simple that the idea was still does the building stay there now, and is really similar like it was the first concept. I was only 1 year there, and the design process was 3 years. So the last 2 years was actually the develop from the whole details, and really how the material work together, a really important part for building and designing the architecture. But for me was like a honor to see that the concept was still there. And
Congratulations.
maybe I never want to have a really big responsibility. And that is that is another competition that I do in another office, and we was third, I think. It's a school in Vienna, and yeah, that is a kind of rendering that we architects use for present some ideas. And as independent, I make also some things. For example, some competitions, but it's about more social things. That is about some catastrophe in I think it was, I cannot remember, but it's a catastrophe, and how the people can come in a risk place to live. And that is another competition that I do about shrinking cities. So how the cities go small, and how can do a better life in the empty cities, like in Germany or in Spain. It's a really a big phenomenon in the last 2 decades. And also I designed some bars in Vienna, and some buildings for different institutions, and also one house in Brazil. And that house is actually my first and the only design that I made from the beginning and to the end. And this is a house in Brazil. And this is also one theme that I make many places in Vienna, the renovations from some flats. And the last part, and we come to the video that we show, is this how I now use the tool video for showing the architecture that I am interested. And that was the first time that I do that. That is in the Wirtschaftsuni, so the economics university campus in Vienna. I worked here not for design the project. I worked here for make a documentation from the whole project. And that is a really big change for me. It's still architecture, and my eyes see architecture, but I communicate the architecture in another way, with pictures and with takes with the camera. And that building, I worked on that campus 4 years, and I learned on that documentation how can I work with video and with cameras.
How about we take a look?
Okay. maybe the last thing, that is a picture that is from a documentation that I do for the TV in Austria, and is again about the empty places, but now in Spain, and is a 1 hour documentation in the official TV in Austria, and it was one of the main opportunities that I had to show social problems with architecture problems, with economic problems, in how we can think in cities or in developed from the future as architect.
Okay.
Okay.
Juan, so before we get into urban thinking, let's watch a video of your documentation of the Vienna University for Economics. Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, we worked that videos, that whole documentation 4 years with the architecture office, who won actually the design for the master plan, and we became also the documentation contract. And it was a team from 3, 4, 5 people, and we worked with BOA Architecture, is the office. And it's a team work. Actually, I make most of the takes, but the edition and the many works that you have to know to do videos was also made from other people, from a really, really nice team. I wanted to say that it is.
Before we move on, I'd like for us to take one more look at a video you made about the campus, and then kind of get into the urban thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. So Juan, I can hear your dad saying, this building was, made in the year 2010, 2012, and this is the summer. It was a sunny day. All about what you were talking about, the context.
Yeah, that is one video that, how I said, is made with a team. But actually, that video was only me. I wanted to take how works the space with the buildings, with the objects, and with the people, how we live. Is like to return to that idea from my father, that actually context is what really bring one idea, or what really bring the correct idea for that place. And like architect, I want to know how is the city, how is our context, to actually, it's like my responsibility. I take that responsibility to bring the best solution only when I have the facts or the issues from one context to bring the solution.
Fantastic. And arguably, it's not an economics, a university for economics without the students. And the students are there, perhaps making the building what it should be. I'd like to open up the floor to questions. If anybody would like to ask Juan a question, please turn on your microphone and just say hi or write us something in the chat room. Juan is here to answer all of your questions. Maybe not all of them there, because I sure have a lot, but that's what he's here for. So please don't be shy. In the meantime, Juan, would you like to begin your urban thinking presentation?
Okay. Like you said, that pictures, you can see many things from my ideas. Also because I am like a professor in some institutions now in our time now, more online, but I bring some classes, or I don't say classes, I say always, I make a conversation with other students, because I am a student from my stuff. Why? Because that stuff is our habitations place. So the habitat is the place where I think, and that's why I think. So more than a urban planner, and I make some doctoral studies in urban planning, and my thesis was about urban planning, but I never feel like really planning, because I never make a really plan. I only want to understand what is our habitat, and that's why I speak with many students in different universities about the point, what is actually our habitat for places, and that is actually the city. So supposedly in 2050, it will be almost 80% from the people on the world who live in cities, and that scared me, or that surprised me. Wow! So city is actually the place where we live, and I am absolutely a urban guy, so I always live in cities. I don't have any idea what about plants, or what about how you can say, bring a plant to grow up. I don't know many things from that. I don't know nothing from the how you said campo, the land,
fields. Yeah, fields and meadows.
I am a really absolutely urban guy, and then I think, okay, I have to know what is the city, and if I study doctorate in urban, I have to know what is the city. But to define what is the city, it takes really long. It's really a complex object, and the city is to define some object. Define means that one. Bring the fin, so the end from something. The words define something, because say what something is and what something not is. And to define the city, then I start to make like an inventory. Okay, what is the city? What is the inventory? It's easy. Okay, houses. Maybe, I don't know if I draw something. Maybe we leave that. What do you think, Simeon?
Of course, sure. In the meantime,
I think I have to short that, because it's already 24:08, and if I start to drawing, that will be maybe too much.
Not a problem. Juan, if I may break in, Professor Lino Rivera of St. Mary's College of California has a question. Lino?
Yes, Juan. Hello, Juan. It's a pleasure to meet you here. My question to you as an architect is, how do you balance beauty and efficiency in a building? Because, you know, from what I've seen in many buildings, they design it so beautiful, but the efficiency, there's a lot of wasted space. And there is, one I can think of is one building in Hong Kong, where it is so beautiful the way it was structured, but there's a lot of empty spaces that cannot be used because of the structures, because of the angles, because it's just wasted space throughout. So how do you balance those efficiency of the building, the usability, and the beauty?
Thanks, Lino. Thank you for the question. I mean, we have to have now 3 hours for the answer. No problem. The thing is aesthetic, so beauty is really subject, but functionality too. So that means the Arab people or the Chinese people of the South Americans or Europeans, we move in a different ways, but not really. So aesthetic is for me opener. Aesthetic is like a unless so universe is really with not end, unend. But I have some answer that may be quickest. I take one interview, the only interview I do in my life for come in one architecture office was like that, 3 minutes, and I bring some plan from me, and the architect asked what I think from my plan. And I said, actually, if the functionality on the plan looks pretty, it works. So the functionality have to have some aesthetic, and if the aesthetic means proportions, the aesthetic means how grow up some building in a really coherent way. So the functionality and the aesthetic bring come in the same point together if the proportions or if the coherence between the solutions for the problem are, for me, the same aesthetic for the problem. So when I see, like you said, that many architects, like me in some offices, make so curves in different ways, angles in different ways, that is not my style, but I learned to bring that styles in a functionality way. I am a functionalist guy from the beginning in my architecture studies, and I wanted to bring always the function point more than the aesthetic. And for me, the aesthetic is only a conclusion. But the point at the end is actually that you have to respond, you have to answer cultures, not only with the functionality, that we have the anthropology or the anthropometrics. So for example, the city is actually a measure from the people. So if you sit in a car, you sit in your car, the seat have the mass. So the measure is from one people who is like 180 or 150, but more or less. And the car is 250 for 5, because it are 5 or 4 people inside, and it's space for that people. And the car have to go inside on the garage. That means the garage have 2 cars, that means 6 meters. And when the garage is 6 meters, the soils, the columns have to be 6 meters and that's why actually the people, we are quite the same in every part of the world, quite the same measures, and at the end the functionality is similar. But the other functionality difference come from the culture functionality. And that's why functionality and aesthetic is like really a cocktail mixture that's in every place is different, but around the world is similar. I don't know if it's clear that go from the global to the local. It's always go and back. And that camp, how you said, the la lucha, that fight between functionality and aesthetic, sometimes we lost that fight, sometimes we win that fight.
Juan, if I may bring in another question from Jerry Callahan. In the city environment where you are designing, how do the surroundings affect your design?
Oh, okay. That is actually my important point, because how I said at the beginning from our conversation, the context is what is the most important thing for me to decide what is my solution. And that means around my object happen so many things that around was before. In the normality for the architects, you have an empty plot, and we come somebody, the city, the state, or some client to say, I want to build here a museum, but it's empty. And then the surround you bring for me the ideas to bring that museum with, like, and I take the question from Lino before, with the ideas from inside from the museum that is abstract on that moment. So it's only ideas that come the client to say, okay, I want a museum for that kind of art, and I have so much money, and we have that kind of, we want that kind of spaces with lights or something, but only in the mixture between the surround, then around from that place, from that plot, the topography, if it's a river in the near, if how come the sun. So the surround bring from outside many facts, many issues that for me are really concrete issues, and from inside come the ideas from the architect, from the client, the needs, the necessities from the problem, and in that mix from back and go and back between surround and inside is the answer, the solution from each architectural building or object. And the city is nothing different. The city is a big object that happens the same. The big problem now for me in the city is that the city come in a natural place, and there are trees, there are animals, there are rivers, there are seas, there are many objects that are from the nature, and we come with the architecture, and we come with the city and bring some things up, and sometimes we kill that surround. I don't know if it's clear, that idea.
Okay, so Juan, I'd like to move on to the work that you do as a visual artist. Like you said, you're the last generation of your school to use pencil and paper to draw architectural designs. Now it's all done with computer. You said before that you wanted to use your camera. I know that you have another camera set up in order to do drawings for us, because like you said, with words, they're not actually able to express that, communicate those ideas of yours as clearly as drawings can. So I'd like us to take a look at this video of your upcoming exhibition. Fantastic. So like I have written here, you mentioned before that architecture implies very complex ideas that are difficult to express in languages many languages you speak, German, English, Spanish, and that aquarelle is somehow more adapted to the expression of those ideas. Tell us a little bit about your the newest part of your career. Juan, I think you're muted still.
Sorry. Yes, I learned with architecture to think, but it was not easy always to express what I think only with architecture. And I think that's why I also try to learn sometimes music, or I try to learn sometimes another languages that it's not a really big successful in me. You heard about my English. And yes, I try to express in a different ways. And that's why I landing on video, because I saw that video have not only the picture like architecture, you cannot live inside like in architecture, and it's the most nice thing when you build some building. But in the video, you can express also another things. Video is a really dangerous thing, or is really, so you have to take care with video, because it's like a politic also a weapon could be also, because you can lie so easy in videos, and because this, you can manage the sound, you can manage the image, you can edit and cut it, the video in the speed that you transport or communicate many things, and the people can cry, or you can make boring the people with videos. And on that way, I also do on my whole architecture life some notes, like every architect, with drawings, with the paper, with the pen. And I recognize that from my inside came when I know that aquarelle, so watercolors, is a technique that is for me really easygoing, because it's 3 seconds. In 3 seconds, you have an idea there, or you don't have it. So it works, that drawing, or it's to the garbage. And that I like it from in really the opposite way from architecture. You can work 10 years in one project in architecture, but you can be ready in watercolors in 3 seconds. And you can also communicate many from the same ideas that you can communicate in one building. So it's aesthetic, there is creativity, but it's also a projection from you thinking in your life, from your context. And I do, yes, I have more than 1,000 from that small watercolors than I want for, I make exposition 2 years ago, 1 year ago, I don't know. And yeah, this is another project. I think sometimes that I make many things and nothing, but actually everything goes again around the same point, and is that context to bring only one solution when you have many ideas to bring only one sentence.
Juan, so tell us a little bit about what's happening in the future. So you've spent, like you said, the greater part of your career as a nomad, going between designing buildings for firms, designing houses in Brazil by yourself, video documentations, and now watercolor exhibitions. What does the future look like to you?
The question is similar, like when the people ask me why I'm in Vienna, and I answer, I make the same questions every day. because I'm not really know what I am in Vienna. I came from one train because one opportunity, and I don't really know what it's the future for me, because I still make architecture, video, drawing, and I write some projects that includes all of that disciplines. I have in my program, in my plan, in that year, I present projects with communication, what is the city, what is architecture, but I'll also present projects and communicate projects for the people, like what is music, a really language for the culture. And then I start to think about what is the culture, and then I land in the idea from culture is between sedentarism and agriculture. And that's why it's really complex for me, because I connect every time ideas that sounds so far away from the questions, but for me are always some bridges, some connections that bring me in the next project. And I have now some projects on my desk, and it's about more videos, it's about some houses to design, it's about some drawings or some text. And I fly between communicate that for students, I fly to communicate that for my child and with my friends. So actually it's really open and for me concrete.
Fantastic. So let's see how we can stay in touch with Juan Munoz. It's on Facebook. Here is his page. So we just look you up on Facebook, Juan, and we can add you as a friend or message you directly?
Yes, I really love that part, because Facebook is so easy, and each one have a Facebook, not each one, but each one can have a Facebook page. And that is the most easygoing for me way to have a contact with the people. But in another way, many people can say, why you don't have a architecture homepage or a video produce homepage, or your project with the classes on homepage. I will have, and I'm been on the way, but I want also to stay near from the easygoing part, not the star architect, never more than friend guy.
Fantastic. Well, Juan, so I have put Juan's Facebook page, his profile, in the chat room. Please feel free to stay in touch with Juan. Ask him any questions, reach out to him. For those who are following us on Facebook Live, just look him up, Juan Munoz. He's there waiting to say hi. So thank you so very much, Juan Munoz, for such an enlightening conversation. It's first time we've had an architect on, and I do hope that you will be willing to come back and maybe give us, go further into detail about your work, and also maybe even begin to tell us about architecture and what we all need to know about it, because it's in some ways very accessible, some ways very mysterious craft and study. So thank you so much.
No, thank you, Simeon, and thank you everybody for being there to hear the chaotic ideas and my English. And yeah, I hope you have lost the
Enjoy.
no, you want
Pleasure.
have architect and your yeah, your idea to speak with the architect is still there.
Fantastic. So let's take a look at what's coming up next week. We have Matthias Lichtenthaler, The Digital Transformation of Daily Life. An unfathomable transformation is happening all around us. Information is being translated into bits, those combinations of numbers that computers process with life-altering consequences. As this quote-unquote digital transformation takes place, the old quote-unquote analog way of doing things becomes an exclusive luxury. Take, for example, comparing emailing to writing a letter by hand and mailing it by the postal service. Beyond email, digital transformation of human languages allows computers to turn speech directly into commands like, Alexa, turn up the heat, I'm freezing. So how does the digital transformation modify our way of doing business and our approach to work, which is not necessarily even in the office anymore? Nobody knows the subject better than Matthias Lichtenthaler, head of digital transformation at the Austrian Federal Computing Center. Come welcome Matthias to our show and discover the digital transformation of our lives today and what it means for tomorrow. As always, all information about upcoming shows is available at www.simeonmoro.com. Then we have another message from Jerry Callahan. Interesting conversation. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jerry Callahan, for participating. So thank you very much to Juan Muñoz. Thank you very much to Professor Lino Rivera. Thank you to Agnieszka Rivolet for her support of this show. Most of all, thanks to you, our participants who make it all worthwhile. From Vienna, Austria, from London, New Hampshire, from the Bay Area, California, goodbye. See you next Wednesday.